kids. I'm Dr. Alvarado, but you can call me Maria.
Hi, I'm Sabrina.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hi, I'm Robert.
Hi, Robert.
I'm George.
George.
I'm Camille.
Hi, Camille. Everyone here?
Yes, everybody's here. Is Dr. Byrne in?
He's going to catch up with us in a few minutes, but he asked me to meet you and show you some of the research that we're doing here.
What kind of research?
Follow me and I'll show you. Dr. Byrne's doing some really neat research into how memory works. He studies the nervous system at a microscopic level and finds how nerves communicate with our brains and then how the brain stores that information. Let's go in here.
Microscopic, like things that are impossible to see through the human eye.
That's right, Robert.
Whoa, we've only talked about the major parts like the brain and the spinal cord.
And motor nerves.
Well, you've learned a lot, but there's more to it than that.
We seem to be getting a lot of that lately.
Well, the human body is a pretty complicated thing. Let's see what Diasnu is working on here. Take a look in the microscope and tell me what you see.
Whoa, what is that? That's weird. What is that?
Well, before I tell you what you're looking at, can anyone tell me what nerves are?
I know. Nerves are bunches of stuff that carry messages to and from your brain.
Well, you're right. They do carry messages, but what is that stuff? Any ideas?
Let me guess. These things, right?
Good guess, Camille. These little things make up part of all of your nerves in your body. These little workhorses are called neurons. The basis of our whole nervous system depends on these special cells. The cells connect it all together, and billions of them make up the brain.
Are they like other cells?
In some ways, these highly specialized cells have a nucleus and structures like other cells in the human body, but they also have some special parts.
So nerves are made up of these things?
It looks like Camille on a bad hair day.
You were saying, Maria?
Sometimes it's hard to see all the details in a microscope. Let's look at this model of a neuron and I can explain the parts to you. Now this is what we call the cell body. It has the nucleus and all of the cell structures in it. The cell body of each neuron has several branches coming off of it that we call dendrites. The dendrites are where transmissions and sensations are received. This long projection in red here is called the axon. It compiles all the messages coming in from the dendrites and sends them on to the next neuron. You might think of it as a telephone line.
What's that white stuff surrounding the axon?
Good question, Sabrina. This is called the myelin sheath. It's a fatty substance that surrounds the axons and some of the larger dendrites. Just like telephone wires are covered with insulation to allow messages to be transmitted quickly and with better clarity, the myelin sheath is insulation for the axon. This allows electrical and chemical signals going through the neuron to be transmitted much more quickly and with better precision. The myelin sheath improves connections between the parts of the nervous system.
So are all neurons connected like telephone lines?
Not exactly. There's actually a tiny junction between the end of the axon and the dendrite. We call this junction a synapse. The ends of the axons contain a chemical called a neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter is released from the synapse and then picked up by the dendrites of the next neuron in line. Messages are relayed to our brain by a series of electrical and chemical reactions. Our brain uses the same pattern of transmissions from axon to dendrite to axon to dendrite for sending messages back to various parts of our body to control their function.
Whoa, that's a lot of information.
Hey kids, how you doing?
Hi, Dr.
Byrne.
It seems we're experiencing some sensory overload.
I understand, even with an explanation as good as Maria's, this material is very complicated. Perhaps if we went over it again, it might help sink in.
That sounds good.
Well, I have some material down in my office. Would you like to take a look at it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Okay, we know what an axon and dendrite is, right?
Yes, dendrites are those branches coming out of a neuron.
Maria showed us one through a microscope.
Good. Remember that the end of the axon contains a chemical called a neurotransmitter. Let's see what happens when it's released into the synaptic space or gap. Different types of neurotransmitters will cause different types of reactions to occur. The neurotransmitter is sensed by the dendrites of the next neuron in the line. When there is enough neurotransmitter near the neighboring neuron, the neuron will make an electrical discharge and send a message along the axon to reach the next neuron in the line, and so on. Messages are relayed to the brain by a series of electrical and chemical reactions, and our brain repeats the process of axon to dendrite to axon to dendrite to send messages back to the parts of our body that control their function. The neuron is the basic unit of communication in our body and connects all of the parts of the nervous system together.
Wow, so every time I do something or think of something, thousands of these neurons pass chemicals between them?
That's right. For example, if a stimulus warns you of danger, sends a signal to your brain.
Like a giant spider.
That's a good example. Let's say there's a big hairy spider crawling right towards you. You see it, and then your eyes send a message to your brain. Neurons in your brain release neurotransmitters to the next neuron, and then they pass the message on and on until the right muscles receive the messages to react. Sometimes it's just a split second, but whatever we're doing, neurons are involved in the process. There are 3 different types of neurons. Do you know what they are?
No.
Well, there are the sensory neurons.
Hey, we talked about those. They pick up on things like smell, hearing, and touch.
That's correct. And then after the sensory neurons, they send messages to interneurons.
Then what happens?
The interneurons send a message to the motor neurons. The motor neurons then activate the muscles to produce the reaction.
Makes sense to me.
I'm still amazed that the brain can do all that it does so quickly. All those millions of neurons and neurotransmitters connected together and sending messages.
Yes, the brain is very complicated, and we're just beginning to learn how it works. Maria, do you think the kids would like to see what's in this room?
Absolutely. I think they've been looking forward to it, and I know they'll be impressed.
Okay, let's go.
Wow.
You weren't kidding.
Look at that guy. Is that really a snail?
Don't the French eat snails?
Yeah, it's called escargot.
That's gross, you guys.
Well, these are not escargot. They are a special kind of snail called Aplysia, and they're very important to our research.
What do you mean?
They have a very simple nervous system. Only about 10,000 nerve cells compared to the hundreds of billions of nerve cells in our body.
Maria said that you were studying how humans' memories are stored. Why all the snails?
We're using the Aplysia because it's much simpler to track the signals that travel back and forth across the neurons when the animal learns.
How are you doing that?
We put obstacles in front of the animal, like food or a mechanical stimulus, and see how it reacts.
So I guess that sets off their sensory neurons.
Absolutely. It sets off a lot of activity, and then we can monitor that activity with biophysical, biochemical, and molecular approaches.
So what's your ultimate goal, Dr. Byrne?
Well, maybe Maria can answer that question.
We would like to pinpoint where in the brain our memory is located, or if it's stored all over. Plus, we'd like to know how memory works.
What have you learned so far?
We know that when learning occurs, that memory is stored as a change in the strength of the connection between the nerve cells. And we've also been able to pinpoint genes and proteins inside the cell that change when memory occurs and make the memory stronger.
Ultimately, we'd like to try to understand disorders of memory like Alzheimer's disease.
Thanks for letting us come by, Dr. Byrne.
Thanks, Maria.
Oh, we enjoyed having you.
Hey, what's that over there?
That's